Welcome back to the show. From music to theater, two of the things that all of us have missed so much over these difficult 2 years. But back at, as far as theater goes, the Gladstone Theatre. By the way, one of the best venues here in Ottawa. If you've never been to the theatre, it's absolutely beautiful. And Shakespeare's Will is playing until May the 7th. I am joined by actor Eleanor Crowder from Bear and Company. Welcome to the show, Eleanor. Great to have you here. And I guess, like, you know, just talking to David there, you must be so excited to be back as well.
I am. No, it's wonderful to be back on stage.
And this is a very
live audiences.
No kidding. And this is a very unique story. You know, and I'm going to say, you know, you're playing the role of Anne Hathaway, and I'm sure for many of our viewers, the first thing that comes to mind is the young American actor. But 400 years before her was probably should be a more famous woman, and that is Anne Hathaway. I won't steal your thunder. Explain to viewers who Anne Hathaway is.
Well, Anne Hathaway is a woman about town in Stratford-on-Avon in the 1600s. She happens to see a rather nice-looking young man at a particular summer fair, and so she chats him up, and she makes a move on him and ends up with him as her husband. The husband ends up being very famous. He becomes Will Shakespeare.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting relationship because you know, reading the description of the relationship, it really sounds like a modern relationship, and it was a relationship over 400 years ago. How would you describe their relationship, Eleanor?
Well, idiosyncratic maybe, worked out rather carefully. The playwright, Vern is a modern Canadian playwright, so he envisions a version of their connection to each other, which has lots of reason to be accurate from the various plays, but in terms of what we know historically, it's very plausible. She's a woman who likes a lot of men, and he's a man who possibly likes men at least as much as he likes women, probably does. So they make their own sort of arrangement, and how that plays out, and where their joys are, and then where they end up struggling with the kind of issues that we all do in the world. It makes a great story. Thiessen's script is absolutely wonderful, very exciting to play.
Was it really Anne that kept the marriage together all along? Would she, you know, get most of the credit for keeping that marriage together?
She's home with the children. She raises their heirs. He's concerned about lineage, as people possibly were more then than now even, but I think everybody's concerned about their children. No, she raises the children, she keeps the house together, but he earns the money, and the money comes in large amounts because he's terribly successful as a playwright. And so, yes, she keeps it together, but it's a joint piece. It's to their mutual benefit, and they love each other. But how that love plays out is full of the kind of perks that grown-up love has.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, you know, us going through a pandemic, I mean, Anne Hathaway at the time, my understanding is she went through two plagues. Is that right?
Yes, and actually, probably historically, there were more than two. There were two references in the play. When she's a child, plague sweeps through the town and actually carries off a third of the whole town. And that leaves her with all sorts of scars from when she was a child. And then when her own children are much the same age, there's another round of plague. Plague closes down the theatres a few times, but it hits Stratford, hits the countryside. And the play is really about how does she protect the children? What does she do to save them and the family? And Will says to her, do what you must.
Right.
So she does.
And Eleanor, it's, you know, in the notes that you sent to us, I think it's unique in that we don't see a woman of this age depicted very often on stage. Maybe just, you know, talk about that a little bit with us and you know, how much pride it must be to be playing, you know, this role yourself.
It's true. It's always been difficult to find meaty roles after... Maybe even after 40 as a woman in theatre, there are very few. So Vern Thiessen's play allows a woman in her 60s to have one great, big, juicy story to tell, and it's a joy. It's wonderful.
We've got Bear and Company's website up there. For those people that aren't familiar with Bear and Company as a theatre group, tell us a little bit about them.
We're a collective, so we basically club together with whoever the artists are each time. This time it's Diana Farreisel, who's a director from Montreal, who's the director of the piece, Rachel Oyster, who's co-producer, as I am, David McGladrey, who is the most wonderful local lighting designer. You might not know you've seen his work, but if
Right.
you've gone to theatres, I'm sure you have. And the team of us, with Chelsea Fawcett as our video director, are a very small, tight collective working to put this together. But the joy about being an artist collective is that each new show we form the group of people who are going to do that particular piece with the most chutzpah, the best skills and talent brought to it.
Yeah, and from someone from theater myself growing up, the bond that you create so quickly is just really magical when you get into a production like this. So congratulations to you and your team, and thank you for joining us, Eleanor. Really appreciate it. I'll remind our viewers at home that Shakespeare it is running from now until May the 7th at the Gladstone Theatre. Again, as I mentioned, just a wonderful venue. Visit the website for ticket information. We'll be back with more after this.